What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. And you know, it's not a Madden video. This is actually going to be one of the very few times I talk about something other than football gaming or NASCAR gaming, or really just gaming in terms of a console I own on my channel. I have been bombarded with tweets, emails. People want to know my take on the Soulja game console. And let me say this. I live in America. I have no problem with anyone doing anything they want to try to improve their financial stability or their family's financial situation. And I think it's always a good thing when you try to leverage your brand. And whether you think Soulja Boy is a viable brand or not is irrelevant. He does have a brand, and he was going to leverage that to sell something that he cared about. Video game consoles. I mean, those are two really good things. I mean, I don't feel like he wasn't doing this with the best of intentions, which is why I'm surprised no one in his management or no one in his partnership groups came to him and said, listen, you may have the best intention here, but this is a really bad idea that is going to put a lot of people at risk with the way that you're executing it. So for those that don't know, essentially what he has done is drop-shipped a emulator console as a Soulja game console at a relatively lower price than other people may expect one to be marked up. However, the problem becomes he's not really manufacturing these. He doesn't have a factory here where he's paying people to assemble and ensure that these are quality units. He's basically just taking a randomized markup off a website anyone can go out and find. There's several websites that sell these emulators and selling them as his own, and again, using his brand to convey that more powerfully than, say, other resources could. Whereas maybe someone may have never heard of an emulator site or knows that these consoles exist, but knows Soulja Boy exists and knows that he has a passion and love for video games and sees this as a good outlet they can follow to take advantage of this offer. Now, one thing we've learned about Nintendo is they particularly aren't fond of piracy. In fact, they may be the most harsh responder to piracy I'm aware of. And that's where a lot of people want to know, what is going to happen with this Soulja game console. And I'll just come out and say this. I firmly don't believe he will be going to jail for this. I do believe there is going to be a monumental fine, which is why this article I wanted to share with you was so important, because we typically don't see an actual figure put on game damage. So essentially what Nintendo likes to do is say, okay, you allowed XYZ to happen, this damaged products XYZ, and now you owe us amount X for damaging that in terms of the money we now can't make because you've given it to someone or people have now played it that didn't have to buy it. So I say that because we all know, going back to Soulja Boy's brand and the power that brand has, this console has been influenced to a lot of people. With that said, you can know that a couple days ago, or really I guess last month, Nintendo actually sued a gentleman who was using the website OfferUp. So much smaller scale. Okay, you have a guy posting on OfferUp where he would allow you to make modifications to a console or buy a console he had already modified that would allow them to play games from Nintendo Switch or the Xbox Classic Edition on these unauthorized consoles. Now, with that, Nintendo actually put a figure on it and said they were entitled to $150,000 for each copyright infringed. The important thing with that figure is we now have a known number. And they've set, even as recent as this year, a precedent for what they feel like those games are worth. Which means essentially, you could have a problem where someone like Soulja Boy puts, say, 9 or 10 games on one of these consoles. He is keeping track, or at least most of the sales from what I've seen are done through PayPal. He has the ability to keep track of how many sales. You literally have the ability for Nintendo to summons those records and now put $1 million, if we say there's only 10 games on each console. So now every console has damages worth $1 million to Nintendo before any other company comes forward. You could easily look at a fine in excess of, let's say he sold 200 consoles. You're looking at, billions of dollars potentially here. And that's where the real worry is. You know, this has created an issue where a lot of people in mainstream media, or maybe a lot of people just outside of the gaming industry, weren't aware of emulators or weren't aware of ROMs or didn't know that these consoles even existed. Wouldn't understand why someone would want to play a game universally on a computer that was on a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis. So I think in one way it is going to damage kind of that whole industry that's always been there, where gamers have shared ROMs. And in fact, there was just another website shut down that did this for free, where gamers shared ROMs because they really have a love and a passion for gaming with each other to keep these games alive, when in many cases some of these consoles are either very hard to come by, don't operate, function, or can't connect to TVs 30 years after their release. I think it's going to damage that whole industry. And if Soulja Boy thought that he was doing something good for gaming while improving his own wealth, I think he's going to find out he did the exact opposite. He actually exposed emulators as something that maybe companies are going to be much more aware of and much more strict in tracking down, and has probably done something that will damage his net worth probably for the rest of his lifetime and generations of his family to come. So, for those of you that wanted to know what my thought was on the Soulja game consoles, there you have it. I appreciate you guys taking time to watch this video, and I will be back in the week with more commentary.